the keyboard to the boardroom. This is the business of esports. Do you want to own your esports fandom and support your favorite content creators and gamers? Arterra Labs is a world-renowned NFT platform with a focus on esports and gaming markets. Their climate-neutral platform enables users to find, mint, trade, and purchase items from some of the top influencers and esports organizations. It's easy to use and even easier to sign up for. Don't miss out on the modern-day NFT gold rush. Just go to arterra.co to learn more. That's ARTERRA.co. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. If you're a regular listener, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't yet, I know so many of you, thousands of you listen to the podcast, and I know so many of you haven't left a review yet. So go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get our podcast, leave that review. It really helps others to find the podcast. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Hey, Paul, doing well. Glad to be back after I missed last week's episode, but big shout out and thank you to Jeff the Juice Cohen for filling in for me. Don't get too comfortable, but I do appreciate it.
he had a baseball analogy, right? The guy that Lou Gehrig replaced, and he felt this was going to be a similar situation where you were going to miss one game, and then Lou Gehrig plays like 2,300 games without missing one.
You know, if he didn't also get COVID, I'm sure he would be in a better position for that. But we both got sidelined for the better part of last week, unrelated. But yeah, that was funny.
I will say for our audience, might find this funny. You know, Jimmy is so important to this business, to our business.
Thank you.
The first question I got when he missed the show last week was from my mom, who said, who was really worried, like, is he okay? And I said, well, he's got COVID. And my mom's next question was, is he going to make it? You really need him. So I'm happy that you've survived, you're living.
I'm healthy and well, and to anyone and everyone, thank you for your concern. I don't want to pull a Joe Rogan with what I was treating myself with, but or my vax and all that stuff. But I'm healthy and well, and thankfully it wasn't too bad.
Here's the question: did you get to play any games while you were not feeling well? Because you would think that's like the perfect chance, right?
You know, I think if I were younger and I had that drive in me, but I really just wanted to get better and get back to work. So what I did was I watched the first 2 full seasons of HBO's The Wire, and I have been sleeping on that show for 15, 20 years, man. It is so good. So I just sat in bed and watched a bunch of TV.
That's I'm happy to hear that, obviously, that you're excited to come back to work. But I was going to say this week, I'm a bit sad. I wanted to try so badly. It came out yesterday, was Lost Ark, because everyone knows who listens to the podcast that I'm a big MMO fan. And I haven't got a chance to play it yet, but I did watch some of the streamers, and I continue to be excited that we're going to see an MMO that takes down WoW once and for all. But I thought maybe you had a chance to play a little bit.
Rest in peace, New World, by the way, for that comment. I was a big fan of that one. And no, Lost Ark has some good reviews too. So,
the irony is there. Amazon Games is also publishing Lost Ark, which is, I mean, not weird, right? Because as a publisher, you can have competitive games in the same genre. But I did think that was interesting. maybe our guest has thoughts on this. Maybe he's played Lost Ark. I am curious. But this is someone, I will say, Jimmy, I'm so excited because this is someone who, like, at conferences you always bump into. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always super pumped about like the future of esports. It's infectious. I love just how he thinks about the space. And I've been so excited to have him on the show. I think we are so we're humbled, we're lucky, our audience is lucky to hear from him, and we have none other than Danny Martin, who is the co-founder and CEO of Esposure. Danny, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast. This is a long time coming.
Very much so. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Danny, I'd love for our listeners who maybe don't know about you, don't know about Esposure, would love for you to give them a little bit of your background, how you got into gaming, why you got into gaming, like what you're focused on these days at Esposure, what you guys do, just some of the Danny Martin story.
Yes, for sure. Well, 2011, I was a collegiate athlete studying entrepreneurship. And it was my student athlete teammate. His console was broken and he was like, I need to figure out how to fix my console so I can get back to gaming. And as an entrepreneurship major, that was my light bulb moment. I was like, man, if I can figure out how to fix this console, I'm sure there's other individuals on campus that are experiencing the same thing. And so, I started doing it. That was my journey into the industry of gaming. And once I fix individual's console, I'm able to extract so much data. How long have they played, how good they are at a game, how they look when they play a game, do they have any gaming buddies, all of those. And I would just leverage that data to start hosting tournaments on campus. And this was before esports was even a thing, before people, coined it esports, especially, having an esports program in a college atmosphere. And so for me, I was the one hosting tournaments with my buddies. And I quickly recognized that, tournament organizing is not an easy task. A tournament organizer is the one that actively engages with the marketing side, the competition side, the technology side, the production side, and ultimately the management side. And to find talent to help you with those actual tournaments is also not an easy task. And so, I really looked at it as like, this is the opportunity to develop a pipeline to help individuals, with supporting their staff in regards to building out events. The more tournaments you have, the more opportunities for gamers to compete. And that was really my moment where I was just like, we're going to try to figure out how to build a technological platform that gives students and individuals within the communities the necessary knowledge, so therefore they can fulfill their jobs in regards to this industry because they're actively gaming. I come from a background in college where you see a lot of party promoters. I don't see any difference between a party promoter and an tournament event coordinator, right? They're the same, the same elements when it comes down to it. So, from my perspective, I just really wanted to, especially being in a geographic location that was high minority and party promoting is a thing. Everybody goes to parties. I really wanted to change the dynamic and showcase that there are other opportunities to make capital and make a living and do something that you're proud of and you really want to be great at. And so creating that pipeline was just that start for us. And so, literally I graduated from college. I went up to, by way of my business, I was offered the opportunity to spend about 2.5 years in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. And so I worked alongside as an entrepreneurship maker. I worked alongside the CEO. He basically took me under his wings. He acquired about $14 million in VC funding. And I was that person. He had left eBay to start his own company. I literally was just soaking up all the knowledge from every component of the actual tech startup. And, it gave me enough confidence that I was just like, okay, I can take this knowledge and bring it back into the esports gaming industry. And so I moved back to Dallas, took a 2,000 square foot loft that was my home and converted it into an esports facility and allowed, tournament organizers to come into that facility to actually, run their actual tournaments at a much more a resourceful way, not as having to spend a lot of money for ballrooms, arenas, and stadiums. It was just, I want to see, tournament organizers succeed. And ultimately I started to recognize like those same tournament organizers, they need support. So I would actively go into schools and ask teachers like, hey, any of your AV students have graphic designing skills or portfolio or videography skills? And I would just leverage that to be able to help the tournament organizers fulfill their events. And so at that point, I was just like, okay, well, we got to create a technology platform that it teaches it. And that's where I started recognizing like, let's build a learning management system, tie all aspects to esports, from management, marketing, technology, competition, and production, and just utilize it as a tool for students to learn the career pathways within this industry. And that's what you see now today as Esposure. So, we leverage our technology platform and also our facility. We have a 8,000 square foot esports studio and gaming and education center here in Duncanville, Texas, which is about 23 minutes away from downtown Dallas. And it's a great way for our team. We have an events coordination team, a production team, a content team, a marketing team, an education team, a dev team. It's a great way for the students that are coming into our facility to see individuals working at an esports organization as they actively complete the programs that we offer, that we facilitate. So for us, we work with schools, specifically Dallas ISD, Lancaster, other independent school districts around, and just really ultimately allow students to create their own portfolios. We call it Pathway to Pro. So it's literally them being able to leverage our program, so therefore they can actively have a portfolio that they can showcase to their prospective employer. And for us, we do production. So that's a great way for us to work with clients, ranging from Sony Columbia to eFuse to that of Philadelphia Eagles and NBA, and really allow those clients to see that these are students working these events. So kind of look at it as like a barbershop school, you're going to pay a little bit less, but you're going to get someone who's training to actively cut your hair. And I look in that same lens when it comes down to esports, is really providing the actual individuals opportunities to build out their portfolios. Because as most college students recognize when they graduate, they say, I'm trying to look for a job, but the job is saying that I need the experience, it's like, what did I even go to school for, So I look at it as an opportunity to allow the actual students to actively touch and feel what esports is, so therefore they can showcase it on a portfolio. Because most organizations within this industry, they're still in scrappy mode, right? They're still trying to figure out how to drive in revenue as their company. And so decisions on hiring and onboarding individuals become very, crucial, who you hire in. And, a lot of individuals are brought in by way of their experience, So I really want to give the students the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I've done and here's how I've applied it. And hopefully I can be a good, suitable fit for your organization.
Danny, I'd love a sense of who is your ideal customer? Who's your target customer? Because, you could spend all your time bringing high school students through. You could spend all your time bringing college students through your program. Is it the big publishers and brands that you want to connect with those students that's more your customer? How do you think about your customer and your target and your focus at Esposure?
Yeah, currently, as the industry is consistently developing, currently our client is the CTE directors within the high schools. Those are the individuals that say, hey, we have 500 students, 1,000 students, 200 students. We want them to go through your said programs. Boom, that's it. But what's going to transpire as we see, schools are naturally going to build out their own programs in their school. They get a chance to see the pathways and they get to see how to do it by seeing Esposure. But eventually they'll do it themselves. So what we then see is that we become like that private academy where the mother becomes our client or the father becomes our client. And they say, hey, does Timmy go to public esports program or do we take them to private academy Esposure esports program? Because Timmy has an interest in this industry and we feel as if we want to expedite their pathway into the actual ecosystem. So we see a transition later, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, where that's going to be who Esposure is literally having, a school around specifically esports and gaming.
See, that's really interesting. And so do you feel that the schools eventually develop their own capabilities thanks to you? Or on their own, because high school, in my mind, is still relatively untapped, still quite early. Call it in the system, right? You have a lot of people talking about college esports today. High school, not so much. I'm curious what you're seeing at that level in terms of understanding, in terms of do they see the benefits? Do the parents get it? Do the educators get it? Yeah. Is it just a question of, the schools don't have the dollars necessarily? What are the challenges and what is the state of high school esports in your mind?
Yeah, so there are many challenges, a lot of those that you proposed. And one of the biggest things is that they are being asked to do esports without knowing esports, and they need someone to hold their hand to get them to understand how it all connects in an educational form. Most schools right now are being asked to do esports from a competitive perspective. Hey, get a team, your team competes. But the true educators are like, okay, how does this correlate to the student who does not want to be a pro Fortnite player, right? And so ultimately, they need to understand, they need to find the resources to help them build out the career pathways. And, for TTE directors, that's career technical education. So they're built around helping the students identify career opportunities and start to build up the portfolio so they can go to college, directly, or go straight into the workforce. And so they understand that that's their task. And so that's why we like working with CTE directors and coordinators. And, naturally, high school is like, okay, well, we have a competition. But when you think about high school now, traditional sports, and we're in Texas, so high school football and basketball is really big here. And when you think about high school football, if there's a football game that happens on a Friday night, the AV team is producing that football game. The graphics team is creating the flyers to put around the school. The commentators are part of the AV team. So ultimately, if a school has a competition, an esports club that's competing, they need to understand the infrastructure that goes around it that helps support that team. Because if you don't support the team, then it's like you just got a club. It's not, you're not able to be as competitive. And we know content is king in this industry, right? So ultimately, you want to be able to showcase your actual content and your performances of your actual club. So therefore, you can go and source sponsors, your local businesses and things like that to add value into those broadcasts. A CTE director needs to, they hear it, somebody can tell them, but until they see it and touch it and feel it. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we built our facility the way we built it, as form of like a esports field trip. When you come into this this venue, it's a full experience where you see our staff, you go around and you see the production room, you see the AV room, and then you end off into the arena. So you get a chance to be able to see how all of this comes together. And every time a CTE director or instructor leaves this space, they're like, oh, I get it now. This is how my students can interact with the esports club that I have on my campus, right? And so that becomes how they start to process it. And when they need help, they have a resource to come to, right? And so that's a big thing for a lot of the high schools. They need that. And so for us, it's like, how can we replicate an Esposure into every geographic location? So therefore, that can be the support system for these high schools. Most high schools right now are being, they're esports companies. They are technological companies. So they're saying, here's my tech platform, and they may be in Canada, or they may be in, in New York, and they're saying, use our tech platform. And that's good. That's good because it gives value to the actual educators. But like we're creatures of touch and feel. We have to apply. We have to see it. You have to be and walk through it. And that's how educators are when it comes down to an industry that they don't know. They didn't grow up in esports and gaming, so it's new for them. Plus, they have the pressures to actually build out a program, so they are actively like, help me, help me. So in this instance, that's where we find our value, as really being there as a resource for them, and advocate for the technology platforms that they have to use to complete their competitions or engage with the curriculums and stuff. So we really look at it as like a support system.
I think it's a great message and something worth repeating, because we get this all the time. It doesn't matter what entry point of the gaming or esports industry you're in. Huge hurdle still remains, I think, that communication factor when you're dealing with someone that's unfamiliar with the space and educating them on what it's all about. And whether that's, with school educators, as you're dealing with, or any other level, it just seems to be a recurrent issue or theme. And I think it's brilliant that you said, hey, touch and feel is a really good way to get people immersed in the culture and to show them, what this is really all about. Danny, I'm curious, that was one great, I think, and really in-depth example of a problem that you resolved and kind of was more foundational to the business, I think. Are there smaller issues that you've had to overcome with similar anecdotes that you can share for other people that are in a similar position?
Yeah. I feel that, like Paul stated, resources is one of the biggest hindrances for schools and organizations and parents. We're experiencing right now a huge learning loss. Like and by 2030, there's going to be upwards of I believe like 9 trillion in capital loss for individuals who actively would have been able to have successful opportunities in these industries, but because of COVID, the learning there's a huge gap, and there are government entities that are actually pouring capital to help mitigate this huge loss for the future. And a lot of these schools and organizations can leverage the actual funds to support their new and engaging, to support programs that are gamified and immersive, to really allow the students to really gain back those specific skill sets that they need to be successful in the workplace, that was really just lost during that of COVID, when a lot of students were engaging with virtual teaching. For a lot of individuals, it was hard for me to pay attention in school. If I was young and I had to pay attention through a computer, I don't know. So you can only imagine how many students are affected with the fact that they're just not even tuned in. And they may naturally feel more comfortable, logging into their actual console or PC and playing Fortnite and with their friends and learning from their friends in a metaverse environment, right? That is probably much more applicable. So now, how do we bring that to the schools? How do we bring that into education? How do we turn education into an opportunity where it's engaging and mitigate that loss? And programs are out there for that, of schools that are being paid by government entities because they're trying to tackle that learning loss as well, because they see it as well. So resources, to answer your question, Jimmy, resources is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest hindrances for that of organization and institutions. But there are ways to add value to your high school, middle school programs, to really to add value to the students within those institutions. So that is one of the largest ones, and I can definitely tell you, as when we first started engaging, it was crazy when COVID hit. When COVID hit in May of 2020 or so, like that, we were set to do high school camps and programs inside of our existing facility at that time. And then all the schools just contacted us like, hey, we can't do any programs. So that's when it let us know, okay, we got to change our whole structure and build something that is as adherable to the current times of what the instructors have to experience. And that was one of the big focal points. And the schools at that point, they were just like, we just don't have the funds as well to go through your program. So we had to start to think about, how do we build a platform that's efficient and from a resource perspective to allow the students to actually engage in a fun manner. And what we're recognizing, that as we started creating content and building out our learning management system and adding functionality to that platform, we were like, man, we can actually turn this into a actual metaverse, where it's literally the students are creating their avatars and they walk into a Minecraft type world, and they're actively able to learn about all components of esports and gaming. And so that is where our trajectory is heading. But the initial steps was trying to combat the actual the lack of resources that educators had, and now leveraging education to teach them where they can find those resources at has been one of those roadblocks, those hurdles that one has had to overcome.
Danny, I want to just press on this, because you've sort of given me a perfect segue with this metaverse thought. And, we've talked about your facilities, your physical, and I love the idea of bringing educators through, right? Bringing some of these people through, letting them see it, touch it, feel it, right? And for students, I think it's that much more compelling of an offering when they're there physically. You can see how this all comes together. Given the current state of the world, though, right, where everyone's afraid of the guy coughing 20 feet away from them, and everyone's got 4 masks on, right? In the current state of the world, how do you think about sort of this physical presence strategy as part of your business? And sorry, my question's long-winded, but is the right number of physical facilities for you 5, 10? How many will you have when all is said and done here? And And do you think that having that physical presence is key to building out Esposure in the long run? Or do you think that the physical facilities all get sort of co-opted by this metaverse thing and you never need them anymore? Like, how do you think about physical versus digital in delivering the learning?
Yes, that's an awesome question. And I believe, you know, authentically that it's both. Like there has to be a physical presence. For me, when I travel to esports, events, tournaments, leagues, that physical presence, that energy that comes with seeing your favorite team win on the stage and everybody is just yelling, just like going to a basketball game. That's basically asking if the actual stadiums will be would they become virtual and nobody goes to the Clipper Stadium or Madison Square Garden. You can't really foresee that arena being empty any time soon. So for us, it's actually just being more resourceful. Instead of creating large spaces, we create more intimate, smaller spaces, right? And have multiple intimate, smaller space to give that experience, but leveraging our technological platform to provide that same immersive experience for individuals whom are not who do not have an exposure in their geographic location or in a different international country, or who prefer to not be in a physical space and really engage with being in a virtual space with their friends. And we look at it as like our big value point as a company is going to be that digital, how we create a learning management system that's outside of the existing learning management systems, but more gamified and more immersive and more metaverse based, then that's going to be our main source of revenue, our main source of engagement. But there's still an element to where that physical presence is ultimately a great expediter to that of skill building when it comes down to operating the necessary equipment and to facilitate events, because events are not leaving, right? So in this instance, events are just becoming hybrid, right? So where you have that audience that's virtual and you have that physical audience that's there, which ultimately, as we were looking at it, our physical space it can only hold 150 people in our spectator arena that we have in our arena and that we have in our space. But what that does now is that it allows us to really focus on content creators and influencers to occupy that space and make it to where it's like, you got to be the best of the best to get in here just to get a seat to watch these competitive gamers compete on the stage. And if you can't, then guess what? Our immersive experiences online is just as good. And we have the capabilities of being able to target individuals from a global perspective. So we look at it as both. We need the actual technological elements to engage with everyone on a global perspective, but that intimate environment is critical to one, portfolio building, and also it's just a whole nother experience that individuals they travel all around the world to attend when it comes down to events that are happening at large stadiums and ballrooms and all type of areas where events happen. I don't foresee that leaving anytime soon. So for us, if that's a 20-year time span, we can take that 20-year time span approach. And then in the instance that we see that is nobody's coming within that 20 years, then we can recognize like, all right, we got to make some moves. We got to figure out how to go directly to one way. But that comes with time. It comes with business, and business is a journey.
Let's talk, Danny, a little bit about, I'll call it champagne problems here, which is, not if you're successful, when you guys are a massive success, right? One of the challenges you mentioned even was, maybe high schools eventually realize they all need to be doing this, right? So they all bring these kinds of capabilities in-house, and Esposure becomes more of like the private academy equivalent to the, public high school. Mm-hmm. Have you guys thought about, and I'm curious, like, what is the plan in that scenario? And is there thought around how do you keep that customer longer than just their time in high school? Like, is there a life of that customer beyond high school for you guys? Is that interesting to you? Do you think there's opportunity there? Because, my view on this is getting these kids on your platform, learning from you, trusting parents, trusting your brand,
yes,
right? All of this makes it relatively sticky.
Yep.
How do you deliver them something after high school, and like what's sort of the thinking there?
Wow, that's another great question. So we look at it as a pathway to pro. So we have 6 programs. We have Discovered, which is essentially a field trip, virtual and live, where the students can actively build out their own events and actually take a tour. We have that of Uncovered, which is essentially a program where students can learn from subject matter experts within the management, marketing, technology, competition, and production realm. We have an Immersion program, which is a 4-week program that allows the students to simulate running their own esports organizations. We have a Master, which is a self-paced learning where they can learn anything that they want to be able to learn. We have a Pro, where they actually can be able to learn from individuals who are pros in their field. And then also we have Flex, where they can just learn as they go, or it's a more lecture style. So that pathway to pro is not just for high school. That pathway to pro can start from middle school all the way up to you becoming a pro, right? And what we learn is the fact that after we've gamified our experience to where individuals, after that experience, an individual can leverage their actual badges that they get from the completing those programs to, one, engage with our sponsors in regards to getting rewards, gifts, things like that. But most importantly, they can leverage those badges to be able to apply to their portfolio. So therefore they can say, here's all the badges that I've accomplished, where not only I've just learned, but I've actually applied. And then for us as a company, it's very critical to work with as many collegiate organizations that are offering scholarships, as many armed forces, Army, Marines, USO, Navy, that are recruiting from an esports pipeline perspective, and non-endemic and endemic entities within the esports and gaming space that are looking for talent to support. Like, we all hear the esports pro teams and the competitors that they bring on their teams, but a lot of these esports organizations, they need talent to support. They need back office talent to support just as much. And so for us, it's literally trying to work with every esports college, esports university, esports recruiting, armed forces, any non-endemic entities that are looking to recruit from individuals within the gaming industry, like architectural firms. They love individuals who are playing Fortnite and Minecraft. And then ultimately that of individuals that are endemic to the industry that are looking for talent. So for us, our value becomes how many people that we can actually partner up with to add value to the students that are coming through our Pathway to Pro system. And that would differentiate us.
And who are some of these partners and sponsors, if you can elaborate in detail? What are the gifts that they're providing? Are they providing additional resources as well, access? We're talking about pro gaming, but a lot of these kids, I imagine, might learn that they like video editing or marketing or things in the gaming industry that don't necessarily require them to be a competitor. So I'm curious if that, I'm sure you've thought out that side of things, and I'd love to hear how you're supporting that as well.
Very much so. So HyperX has been a huge supporter for us. They initially reached out to us because of the educational element, and they knew that we engage with schools. And so actively have an initiative in regards to broadcasting was something that's huge, because a lot of students in schools, they're actively looking to utilize OBS or vMix. They want to stream, they want to content create, they want to broadcast. And that was a huge partner. So being able to have access to, cloud tools, to microphones, all of that, to where we can give that as prizes and giveaways to the students that are going through our programs that accomplish success within our programs. That's an automatic good partner that comes with it, as well as AMD being able to provide PCs, gaming laptops, PCs, Alienware, Dell, great partners. So like, these partners become very critical in regards to the space from a reward perspective. And other partners like non-endemic, like we're prepping for like eFuse, Crocs, Philadelphia Eagles. Like, these are great partners that we engage with, because actively they're looking for a pipeline of talent. So just having those partnerships with those entities and those individuals is a great way for them to say, wow, we're looking for a event coordinator, or we're looking for social media or a photographer. They should know where to go, along with Hitmarker and along with other platforms that are out there. We just really want to be a source where we can showcase, like, hey, these students have actively applied their knowledge by way of going through our programs. And here's how you can trust our brand to pull students from here, so therefore they can reach their goals and their successes.
So on the flip side of that, what are you hearing from the students directly? Where are their interests? Where are their trends going? Obviously, you guys are supporting them in so many amazing ways, and you have so many great partners. But and I don't want to knock anyone or anything that you're doing, because I think it's wonderful. But you
Yeah.
have to have an understanding of the trends, right? And maybe more of them are going in a certain direction as opposed to another. So without pointing the finger at who's less popular, I'm curious
Yeah.
who the more popular or the more popular routes
Yeah.
that you provide are.
So currently, right now, it's I want to be a competitive gamer. So I'm having to tell the story like,
Me too.
only 1%, are going pro. So here's your other options, start to figure out how to diversify your portfolio. So that's a big thing that's happening right now. And that's great because it gives us a great opportunity. We've seen, significant individuals, come through our program that are actually pro gamers that are representing pro organizations. But I always tell the students is like, that's like LeBron James going straight from high school into the pro. That's very rare, and it's even rarer in the esports space. And so when it comes down to it, I actively leverage that reality to say, hey, you may can. I'm not going to tell you can't, but here's some other things that you can do, and I can do it in a way of saying everybody is great. Even if you become a pro, when you're a pro, everybody's good at the game. It's how you differentiate yourself. How do you build your brand? How do you make sure your toxicity is under control? How do you make sure that you're posting and you're creating content? That is really what's going to make you a mega star in this space. Once you're good at the game, you're good at the game. But what do you do to differentiate yourself? And starting now can help you build those skill sets. So therefore, if you do become a professional gamer, you now have an arsenal of equipment that you can leverage to take yourself above and beyond. And in an instance that you do not become a pro, you have the capabilities of leveraging and falling back on those skill sets that you developed. And whether that's content creating or broadcasting or such. So I can really mold it from that perspective to talk to, not to kill someone's dream, but to say, here, if you do this now, you can be that much more successful if you do become a professional gamer.
I'm curious, Danny, what the the high schools, it's a fine line, right, between discouraging kids from sort of pursuing these dreams of pro stardom but also, giving them the reality of, you may want to learn how to edit some videos because,
Yeah.
that pro career. How do you position that with the schools, right? Because they want to I assume they want their kids to be, have stars in their eyes as much as possible. And I guess I'd love just a little bit of insight in terms of how you find this balance, both with the kids and with the educators who are trusting you with the kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, the educators are already like, the chances of you becoming pro, and that's all we've been talking about is pro gaming. So they're already ready for the other elements, the other outside elements. So therefore they can actually get more engaged with their actual students and give them some suitable tools to help them be successful in the space. And so, talking directly to the educators is they already get it. They're looking for it. So when engaging with the students, that becomes the hardest part. It's like, hey, we have this event and you can compete in this event, but also, here's some other educational programmings that you can come, or leveraging it like recess. So like, here's, get your homework done. And then when you finish your homework, you can play the games, and leveraging that as an opportunity when we can do programs where students complete the programs and we can have a event, we can have a tournament or a league by way of the individuals that complete. And we haven't got to that point just yet, but we see it as an opportunity to leverage it as like a recess type of element where the actual students are excited to complete the program so they can get to the play.
How much feedback do you get from the parents on this? Right? Like, I'm not teaching this semester at St. Peter's, but historically I've taught every semester at St. Peter's University, like an esports management program. And I love, it's often the university uses me because what they do before the semester starts, when kids are, choosing their colleges that they want to apply to, they bring a whole room of parents together and I stand there and tell them why this is a worthwhile career path. Right. Yeah. I'm curious what kind of feedback you get from the parents with your program and how they feel about it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of concern, right? There's a concern of too much screen time. There's a concern of health on eyes. There's a concern on toxicity. There's a concern of one just playing and not doing anything else with their lives. So there's a lot of questions. And my facility is in the southern sector of Dallas, which is high minority driven. And the questions here are, why should my son or daughter play games when they can go play football or basketball? And there are clear scholarships and the opportunities to be a pro and make millions and millions of dollars. So I have to combat those questions all the time with the perspective of like, here's a new industry. Like I always leverage like current times, like Facebook going to Meta. Facebook now wants to be a development company. They want to be a gaming organization now. All right. Okay. Look at Microsoft just acquired, Activision Blizzard, $70 billion. Why? This is the elements. This is a new traction of individuals that are going to be playing on those games. And that's a new user base for that of Microsoft. And it's also a great opportunity for Microsoft to go into the metaverse. Right. So it's like being able to give historical data, new data to that of the actual parents. So therefore they can make conscious decisions where they're like, they say, okay, I get it. And they go do their own research after that. And they ask around. So really equipping them with the perspectives of what's transpiring in the industry and also where the industry has moved in the amount of time. So just being able to tell someone that, hey, 5 years ago, this industry was not where it is as it is today. And in 5 more years, it's going to look completely different. And that's how fast it's moving. So you have the capability of getting in early and adding value to your son and daughter, or you can kind of hold off. You can just sit back and you can watch and see if you're a little bit more risk averse. And so in this is these are just the reality questions, the real in-depth conversations that I have to have with parents. And I'm just straight blunt and very upfront because a lot of the parents that are in our geographic location, it's almost like life or death. They're like, I want to make sure that my son is prepped because if they don't have any activity, they're susceptible to that of gangs, drugs, jail, or death. So in this instance, it's more that when a parent comes to me, they're like serious, like you're gonna tell me that you better make sure my son is okay, So I'm already prepped for that, So it's a life and death situation where you're in an environment where resources are very slim. And so everything is critical. Like, it's like, do I do this or do I pay my rent? That becomes really, 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 really touchy, So I'm just frank. I showcase data, information, and results. Results are really big. It's like schools, colleges, once they start to turn out players out of or successful individuals out of their programs, then it's going to promote their actual program so more people can come to their program. And it then turns into a great recruiting opportunity. With us at Esposure, I can speak on results. I can say, here's this gamer, here's where they're working, here's where this individual is in AV, here's the companies that he's now working for or he or she is working for, here's where we're at right now, here's what we've done. And results speak more than anything. And when an actual parent can see results, then they're actively like, okay, all right, I get it, I understand. Show me the way now.
I think it's fascinating that like high school football is your biggest competitor, right? Fundamentally, right? More than anything else, esports, that you're competing against football. And I'm curious because there will come a time, I feel like, where that will tip, right? The scales will tip there, and it'll be a much more obvious kind of argument. But it is interesting that traditional sports still like
very interesting.
The more obvious path, I guess, to wealth for their kids or success for their kids. And I'm curious, do you think that will be the case across the country, or do you think that's very specific to certain markets like the one you're in, Danny?
I think it's specific to the certain market. I feel as if like more affluent areas, they're equipped with thinking, they're equipped with having the capabilities to think in the future and to see trends, and they're able to go with those trends. And I think that's one of those elements where it's like already like, we're going to take our child into this direction because we can just see the future and we have the means to be able to go for it. It's the same thing in regards to our communities being, a PC versus a console. Most underrepresented communities have consoles. And if you play a Fortnite on a console versus someone playing Fortnite on PC, it's just like you completely at a disadvantage at this point. So you don't even have the opportunities to be able to add to showcase your true skill set because you're limited by way of your infrastructure. And so in this instance, it becomes the same. It becomes the same component. If you have resources, then you can start to think further. So a parent can start to champion esports at a much earlier state than someone who doesn't have those resources. So that's why it was really big for me to bring my facility to the southern sector of Dallas and leverage the influence that I have in this industry to bring people on the outside to this area to showcase to the students that it is possible. And here's the individuals that are speaking, the information and the language of esports. And here's a good representation for you so you can go and see that yourself can be in those same shoes.
The long-term transformative potential is massive. That's the beauty, I think, of your business beyond the financial success. I just think the way it can transform the community around you and influence those kids. That brings us, guys, just a quick note before we wrap up. That brings us to everyone's favorite new segment, which is the Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada's cross-examination. Danny, and for those of you who are new to the podcast, Jimmy's going to ask a few questions, rapid fire, get a bit of insight into who you are as a person, Danny. Judge Jimmy, take it away.
Yeah, I'm happy I didn't get to do this last week, and no pressure, Danny. Just some quick questions, like Paul said. First question: what was your favorite video game growing up?
Red Dead Redemption.
Nice, love it.
What did you think of the sequel, by the way?
I didn't get a chance to play it that much, but I love the graphical elements, and I love the actual thought that went into creating your own environment and living within your own environment. It was almost like the same. It was just enhanced just a little bit, but I didn't get through the whole story. But I ultimately, first vision, it was just the way that it was positioned from a business perspective. I like games that forces me to think in real time, in real life.
It's good storytelling, and I can tell you I spoke with a Southern accent for like weeks after I played that game because it's just so fun.
I love it.
Next question. What's your go-to gamer snack or drink?
That's a really good question. I would say water. Water is my friend.
Come on, Danny. Come on.
I know, water is my friend, and snack, it would be M&M's.
There you go.
Finished the whole M&M.
Wow, that jar is empty, man.
I just finished the last one just a minute ago, too.
Nice. That's so funny. I thought you were going to say G Fuel with that sponsorship. No.
Oh man, I was like, we're in like a we got multiple oh man, that's funny.
Yeah. Next question. What is your favorite show or movie based off of a video game IP?
Oh, can it be not an IP, but just a video game? Can I say Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Yeah. So I understood because of the whole metaverse element of our company and where we're trying to go. It helped align from a business perspective. It just gave inspiration. Like, okay, this is where it's going.
Talking about the movie or the book? The movie.
It's the perfect thing to show people who are new to the space, right? Because while it's maybe not the greatest movie ever made, Spielberg did a great job, I think, of making it super accessible to people who don't.
It's really hard to do with that book, with that story too. Danny, I'd recommend the book. If you like the movie, the book is so fantastic.
I will do that. Perfect.
Yeah, and they just came out with the second. I'm pretty sure Ready Player 2. So something to look forward to.
Perfect.
Let's go. Next question. If you could go back to school, what class? Actually, I'm going to change it up a little bit from our normal questions because you have these students with you. What class or kind of course do you advocate them outside of your esports programming? What class or course do you recommend most for today's high school or youth?
Yeah, so it'll be two. It'll be entrepreneurship for the perspective of event coordination and management, and then also AV. So AV encompasses broadcast and videography, photography, graphic designing. AV is the most logical, most like, if I needed some skills right now to go into the workforce, AV, I would love to be able to be involved inside of AV. But naturally, at heart, I'm an entrepreneur, so like I really loved entrepreneurship.
I think it's great. Last question. Where do we hope to see you and Esposure in the next 5 years?
Yes, that's awesome. The bigger focal point is that we're trying to actively build exposures. We made an awesome partnership with Launch Life International that has over 300 existing franchises in the educational space, and they brought us on as their esports arm. So therefore, we're going to be expanding very fast over the next 2 years. And we see ourselves being in areas not only in the United States, but in an international base.
That'll be exciting. Well, I hope for it. Paul, back to you. The prosecution rests.
Danny, if you want to be found, or you want to be followed, or you want people to find or follow Esposure, where can they find or follow you or the business?
Most importantly, it's like I leverage LinkedIn. That's one of the most powerful tools on the planet right now. And it's not because just a person; it's the activity that's leveraged inside of that platform. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, that's cool, but go follow my activity, because the activity will showcase to you everyone else in the industry, and you can learn from individuals who are 10 times better and 10 times more knowledgeable inside of the actual space. And for me, I try to interact with as many people as I can for the benefit of the individuals who are just meeting me and they're looking for information about the industry. And so following me on LinkedIn is just the best way for you to learn about everybody else.
I love that. And we're big fans of you, Danny, and the mission and what you guys are building. And so wish you guys obviously the greatest success. For our listeners, guys, just a couple of housekeeping things, reminders. We do a live stream every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We cover all the news that came out in the last week from the gaming and esports industry. It's a lot of fun. It's a bigger cast, and we get to do it live with you guys. So make sure to show up for that. You can also watch it after the fact. It's recorded, and so you can watch it after the fact or listen to it after the fact. But showing up live Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, basically on every platform. It goes live on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Trovo, even on Twitch, like literally everywhere. And make sure to follow Business of Esports on every social platform, Biz Esports or Business of Esports, basically everywhere. And we appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much. Jimmy, thank you. Danny, thank you. All of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, we will see you next week.
Peace.